The bookstore smelled of old paper and rain when Nora Bennett realized she could not afford to eat that night. She had counted the bills in her pocket 3 times during her lunch break, and each time the numbers refused to change. $14.32. The medication her younger sister Lily needed cost $60, and the prescription could not wait another week. Nora stood behind the counter of Morrison's used books, a cramped shop on the east side of Portland, where the rent was cheap and the customers were fewer each month. She had been working there for 2 years, ever since she dropped out of community college to take care of Lily. Their parents had died in a car accident when Nora was 19 and Lily was 12. The insurance money had run out faster than anyone predicted. The rain hammered against the window, turning the street outside into a blur of gray. Nora watched people hurry past with umbrellas and purpose, going somewhere that mattered. She felt the familiar weight settle in her chest, that heaviness that came from being invisible in a city full of people who never looked down. The man who noticed everything, he walked in at 6:30. When the store was almost empty, Nora noticed him immediately because he moved differently than their usual customers. No hurry, no casual browsing. He walked with intention, like someone accustomed to entering rooms and changing them. Julian Crane was not handsome in the obvious way. His face carried the kind of quiet strength that came from surviving things that should have broken him. He wore a simple gray coat, well-made but not flashy, and his dark hair was damp from the rain. When their eyes met across the store, Nora felt something shift in the air between them. She forced her attention back to the stack of returns she was processing. The store owner, Mr. Morrison, had left early again, trusting her to close up. Trust was the only thing he could afford to give her besides the minimum wage. The man moved through the aisles slowly, pulling books from shelves and reading their first pages before sliding them back. Nora watched him from the corner of her eye, noting the careful way he handled each volume, as if books were living things that deserved gentleness. When cruelty wears expensive clothes, 20 minutes later, 3 college students stumbled in, laughing too loud and smelling of beer. They were the kind of customers Nora dreaded. Wealthy kids from the university who came to use bookstores like they were visiting museums of poverty, amused by the quaintness of other people's struggles. One of them, a blonde girl in a designer jacket, picked up a first-edition poetry collection and wrinkled her nose. "God, it smells like someone's basement died." Her friends laughed. Nora's jaw tightened, but she kept her face neutral. She needed this job. She needed every single shift. "Can I help you find something?" Nora asked, her voice carefully polite. The girl looked at her then, really looked, and Nora saw the moment of assessment. Her gaze traveled over Nora's faded thrift store cardigan. The jeans with the repaired knee, the shoes that had been resold twice. "Do you even read these books?" the girl asked, her tone suggesting it was a joke meant to be shared with her friends. "Or do you just dust them?" Heat flooded Nora's face. Before she could respond, the quiet man appeared at the end of the aisle. He did not say anything. He simply stood there, his presence somehow filling the space in a way that made the college students glance at him nervously. "We were just leaving," one of the boys muttered. They left quickly, their laughter dying as the door closed behind them. The store fell silent again, except for the rain. Nora's hands were shaking. She hated that they shook. She hated that words from spoiled strangers could still cut through the armor she had spent years building. "Thank you," she said to the man, though the words felt strange in her mouth. She was not used to being defended. He nodded once, then returned to browsing as if nothing had happened. The book that changed everything, 15 minutes before closing. Roar. He brought a single book to the counter. It was a worn copy of a novel Nora loved, one she had read 3 times when she could not afford to buy new books. The spine was cracked, and several pages were loose. "This one is damaged," Nora said, examining it. "I can give you 20% off. Full price is fine," he said. His voice was quiet, but there was something in it that made Nora look up. Their eyes met. For a moment, the noise of the rain seemed to fade. She felt seen in a way that made her want to look away and lean closer at the same time. He paid in cash, its exact change, and took the book without asking for a bag. Then he was gone. Disappearing into the rain-soaked street before Nora could say anything else, she locked the door at 7 and began cleaning up. That was when she noticed the book on the counter. He had left it behind. Nora picked it up, confused. Then she saw the torn pages deliberately ripped, stuffed into the back cover. Her confusion turned to anger. What kind of person bought a book just to destroy it? She opened the back cover to remove the torn pages, and that was when she found the card. Heavy stock, cream-colored, with elegant printing. Julian Crane, Chief Executive Officer, Crane Industries. Below that, written in pen, tomorrow, 9 in the morning. 1425 Westlake Tower. Come alone. And beneath that, 3 words that made her heart beat faster. This is not charity. When pride meets desperation, Nora stared at the card until the letters blurred. Crane Industries was one of the largest publishing and media companies in the Pacific Northwest. Julian Crane was the self-made billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. The kind of success story people wrote articles about. She thought about the torn pages. The way he had watched her all evening, the deliberate way he had left the book behind. This was some kind of test. Some kind of game rich people played when they were bored. Anger flared hot in her chest. She did not need another person treating her like a curiosity. Like poverty was something interesting to observe from a safe distance. But then she thought about Lily. About the medication they could not afford. About the hospital bills that kept growing no matter how many extra shifts Nora worked. She thought about how many times she had swallowed her pride, as surviving required it. Nora tucked the card into her pocket and finished closing the store. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. She walked to the bus stop with the card pressed against her hip like a secret she was not ready to name. That night, she sat beside Lily's bed and watched her sister sleep. Lily was 14 now, small for her age. Her body worn down by illness that should have been treatable if they had money for the right doctors. Nora brushed Lily's hair back from her forehead and made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. Tomorrow, she would go to Westlake Tower. She would walk into Julian Crane's world and demand to know what game he was playing. And if he tried to humiliate her, she would walk out with her head high. Even if it killed her. The rain started again outside, harder now. And Nora closed her eyes and tried not to think about all the ways tomorrow could break her. Westlake Tower rose from downtown Portland like a monument to everything Nora Bennett had never been allowed to touch. 43 stories of steel and ambition. Reflecting the morning clouds in windows that probably cost more than she would earn in her lifetime, Nora stood across the street for 10 minutes, watching people in expensive suits flow in and out of the revolving doors. Each one moved with the confidence of belonging, of never having to prove they deserved to take up space in the world. She almost turned around 3 times. Pride was a dangerous thing when you were poor. It made you walk away from opportunities because accepting help felt like admitting defeat. But Lily's face kept appearing in her mind, pale against hospital pillows, smiling even when the pain made her small. Body shake. Nora crossed the street before she could change her mind again. The lobby swallowed her in marble and morning light. A security guard looked at her with the kind of assessment she had learned to recognize. His eyes moved over her worn jacket. The shoes she had polished until the cracks barely showed, the second-hand purse she had bought at a church sale. "Can I help you?" His tone suggested she had wandered into the wrong building. "I have an appointment with Julian Crane." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or skepticism. He made a phone call, spoke in low tones, then handed her a visitor badge with a reluctance that made her want to leave it on his desk and walk out, but she clipped it to her jacket and followed his directions to the elevator that would take her to the top floor, where success remembers its scars. Elevator doors opened onto a reception area that felt more like an art gallery than an office. Everything was clean lines and careful silence. The kind of space designed to remind visitors they were somewhere important. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and perfect posture approached. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Crane is expecting you. Please follow me." They walked down a hallway lined with photographs. Nora glanced at them as they passed. Not corporate portraits or stock images, but real moments captured in black and white. A woman reading to children in a library, teenagers building something together in a workshop, an old man teaching a young boy how to fix a bicycle. The woman led her to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Julian Crane stood with his back to the door, hands in his pockets, studying the skyline as if searching for answers in the architecture. He turned when they entered. In daylight, Nora could see the details she had missed in the bookstore. The lines around his eyes that came from sleepless nights, not laughter. The careful way he held himself, like someone who had learned not to take up more space than necessary. The watch on his wrist was expensive, but old, worn smooth by years of use. "Thank you, Patricia," he said to the woman, who nodded and closed the door behind her. They stood in silence for a moment. Nora refused to be the first to speak. She had come because curiosity was stronger than pride. But she would not make this easy for him. "You came," Julian said finally. "You left your book." Nora pulled it from her bag and set it on the table between them. The torn pages seemed intentional. A flicker of something crossed his face. Approval, maybe. They were why. The question came out sharper than she intended. "Please, sit down." He gestured to the chairs around the table. Nora remained standing. "I have work in 2 hours. If this is some kind of experiment, I would appreciate knowing what I'm part of before I waste more time." Julian studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough. You want honesty. I was testing you." He'd flooded her cheeks. "Testing me. I needed to know what kind of person you were when no one was watching." He moved to the window, keeping distance between them, as if he knew she needed space. "That book was worth $300. First edition, signed by the author. When you saw the damage, you tried to give me a discount instead of keeping quiet and charging full price." Nora's hands curled into fists. "So you destroy valuable things to see if poor people are honest. That's your hobby?" "No." His voice was quiet but firm. "I destroy my own property to see who notices the difference between price and worth. Most people in your position would have taken the money and said nothing. You tried to protect a stranger from overpaying for something damaged. Congratulations on confirming that poor people have morals. Feel better about yourself now?" Nora grabbed her bag, ready to leave. "My mother cleaned houses for 20 years. The words stopped her at the door. She worked 16-hour days scrubbing toilets in mansions owned by people who never learned her name. When she got sick, those same people fired her rather than help with medical bills." Nora turned slowly. Julian was still facing the window, but his shoulders had changed, carrying a weight she recognized. "She died when I was 17, he continued. "The funeral cost more than we had. I buried her in a cardboard casket because it was all I could afford. The rich family she had worked for the longest sent flowers. Expensive ones. They probably cost more than her last month's salary. When pain builds bridges between strangers," Nora set her bag down. The anger was still there, but it had shifted into something more complicated. "I built this company from nothing," Julian said, turning to face her. "I worked 3 jobs, slept in my car, taught myself coding in public libraries. I got lucky with timing and an idea that happened to work. But I never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. To have people look through you like you were a ghost haunting their comfortable world." He walked to the table and pulled out a folder. "I have been watching Morrison's used books for 6 months. Not you specifically. I wanted to understand how small businesses were struggling, what kind of support they needed. But I kept noticing you." Nora's breath caught. 6 months. The way you recommended books to customers based on conversations you remembered from weeks before. How you stayed late to help an elderly man find a poetry collection his late wife had loved. The care you took with damaged books, trying to preserve them instead of throwing them away." Julian opened the folder. "You dropped out of college to take care of your sister? You work 50-hour weeks and spend most of your paycheck on her medical care. You have not bought new clothes in 2 years because every extra dollar goes to keeping her alive." Shame and fury warred in Nora's chest. "You investigated me. Did research on someone I wanted to hire? There's a difference. Hire." The word came out strangled. Julian slid the folder across the table. "I am starting a foundation. Literacy programs for underserved communities. scholarships for kids who age out of foster care, support for small independent bookstores. I need someone to run it who understands what it means to fight for education when the world says you do not deserve it. Someone who sees value in torn pages and damaged covers because they know worth is not the same as perfection. Nora stared at the folder without touching it. Inside, she could see papers with numbers that made her dizzy. The salary is $82,000 a year, Julian said. Full health insurance that covers family members. Flexible hours. You would have complete control over how the programs develop. I will fund it, but I will not interfere unless you ask. Why me? Nora's voice was barely a whisper. Because you tried to give me a discount on a book you thought was damaged. Because you defended its worth even when it cost you a sale. Julian's eyes met hers, and she saw something raw there. Something that looked like the reflection of her own exhausted hope. Because someone who protects torn pages will fight like hell to protect torn people. When choice feels like surrender, Nora opened the folder with shaking hands. The numbers blurred together. More money than she had ever imagined having. Health insurance that would cover Lily's treatments. The surgery her doctors said she needed, but they could not afford. Everything she'd been drowning to reach was suddenly within arm's length, but accepting felt like admitting she could not do it alone. Like proving everyone right who had ever looked at her and seen someone who needed saving. I do not want your pity, Nora said, her voice breaking on the last word. Good. I am not offering it. Julian's response was immediate. I am offering you a job you are qualified for and will have to work incredibly hard at. This foundation will fail without someone who believes in it. I built companies. I do not know how to build hope. That requires someone who has had to create it from nothing. Nora looked up at him. What if I fail? Then you will fail at something that matters. Is that not better than succeeding at barely surviving? The words hit her in the chest like a fist. How many times had she told herself that survival was enough, that wanting more was dangerous, that people like her did not get to dream beyond making rent? Lily needs surgery, Nora heard herself say. Soon. If I take this job, if I accept this insurance, I am taking it because she needs it. Not because I believe I deserve it. Fair enough, Julian said. Take it for whatever reason lets you say yes. The foundation needs you regardless of your motivation. Nora looked out the window at the city below, at all the people moving through their lives, unaware that hers was about to change in ways that terrified her. She thought about her mother who had died too young from being too tired. About her father, who had given up trying when the world gave up on him first. About Lily, who still believed in happy endings because Nora had protected her from knowing how rare they were. I want control, Nora said, turning back to Julian. Complete control over programs, hiring, budget allocation. You fund it, but I run it. If you do not like my decisions, you can fire me, but you do not get to undermine me while I am working. Something that might have been respect flickered in Julian's eyes. Agreed. I want it in writing. All of it? This is not a handshake deal. I want a contract that protects both of us. My lawyer will have it ready by end of business today. Nora took a deep breath. Then yes, I accept. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and fear and the terrible vulnerability of hoping for something better. Julian extended his hand. When Nora took it, his grip was firm but not overwhelming, the handshake of equals agreeing to try something difficult together. Welcome to Crane Industries, Miss Bennett. Call me Nora, she said. If we are going to do this, we do it honestly, Nora, he repeated. And the way he said her name felt like the beginning of something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed more than they could admit. 3 months into the job, Nora Bennett discovered that Julian Crane disappeared every Thursday afternoon. She noticed it by accident. Patricia, his assistant, mentioned rescheduling a board meeting because Mr. Crane had his Thursday commitment. When Nora asked what commitment, Patricia smiled in a way that suggested she knew something beautiful and sad at the same time. He visits the children's hospital, Patricia said quietly, every Thursday for the past 8 years. He reads to the kids in the cancer ward. Nora felt something shift in her understanding of the man who had changed her life. She had been working at the foundation for 3 months, building programs and hiring staff, and Julian had kept his promise. He funded everything she requested and never interfered with her decisions. But he remained distant, professional, like he was afraid to get too close to the work they were doing together. Now she understood why. He was already close to the pain they were trying to heal. He had been living in it every Thursday for nearly a decade. The foundation office occupied the 5th floor of Westlake Tower, a bright space Nora had filled with donated books and photographs of the communities they served. She had hired 6 people so far, each one someone who understood struggle not as a concept, but as a lived experience. Together, they had launched literacy programs in 3 neighborhoods and secured scholarships for 42 students. Every success felt like proof that she belonged here, that she was not just a charity case playing at having purpose. But doubt still crept in during quiet moments, whispering that she was one mistake away from losing everything. When walls come down slowly, the invitation came on a cold November morning. Julian appeared in her office doorway, hesitant in a way she had never seen him. "I have a strange request," he said. Nora looked up from the grant proposal she was reviewing. "Strange how?" "Thursday is Thanksgiving. The hospital does a special event for the children who cannot go home for the holiday. I usually go alone, but this year I was wondering if you would like to come with me." He spoke carefully, like each word was something fragile he was afraid of dropping. You could see the kind of work that inspired the foundation. "Only if you want to. No pressure," Nora studied him. In 3 months, they had maintained careful boundaries, professional respect, occasional conversations about books or childhood memories, but nothing that ventured too close to the vulnerability that had marked their first meeting. He kept his distance like someone afraid of wanting too much. "I would like that," Nora said. "Thank you for asking." Relief flickered across his face, quickly hidden. "I will pick you up at noon, where broken things become whole." The children's hospital was decorated with paper turkeys and handprint leaves, bright colors trying to distract from the reality of machines and medicine. Julian moved through the halls with the ease of someone who had walked them many times. Nodding to nurses who greeted him by name, they entered a common room filled with children in various stages of treatment. Some had lost their hair, others were connected to IV poles, but all of them lit up when they saw Julian. "Mr. Crane." A small boy with a Batman shirt wheeled his chair over. "Did you bring a new book?" "2 new books, Marcus." Julian knelt to the boy's level, his whole demeanor softening. "And I brought someone special to help me read them. This is Miss Nora. She knows more about books than anyone I have ever met." Marcus looked at Nora with the solemn assessment of someone who had learned too young that adults could not always be trusted. "Do you like adventure stories?" "They are my favorite," Nora said honestly, kneeling beside Julian. "Especially ones where the heroes have to be brave, even when they are scared." Marcus nodded slowly. "Those are the best kind." For the next 2 hours, Nora watched Julian transform. The careful distance he maintained in the office disappeared completely. He read with different voices for each character, acted out battle scenes that made the children laugh, and listened to their stories with attention that made each child feel like the most important person in the world. During a break, while the children ate their Thanksgiving meal, Julian and Nora stood by the windows overlooking the parking lot. "You are good with them," Nora said. "They remind me why the foundation matters." Julian's voice was quiet. "My mother died in a hospital like this. I sat in rooms like these while doctors explained why we could not afford the treatments that might have saved her. I was 17 and powerless, and I swore that if I ever had money, I would make sure other kids did not have to feel that way." Nora's throat tightened. "Is that why you started the foundation?" "I started it because I met a woman in a bookstore who tried to protect a stranger from being cheated, even though she was barely surviving herself. You reminded me that there are people fighting battles no one sees, and they deserve someone in their corner." He looked at her then, really looked, and Nora felt the careful walls between them begin to crack. "You reminded me what courage actually looks like. When 2 broken pieces fit together, the moment shattered when a nurse approached, her face serious. "Mr. Crane, there is a young girl in room 412 who just came in for emergency admission. She asked if the bookman was here today. Her sister is with her." Julian's face went pale. He looked at Nora with an expression she could not read. "Room 412? "Yes, sir." Lily Bennett. The world tilted sideways. Nora was running before she made the conscious decision to move, Julian right behind her. They found Lily in a hospital bed, small and pale, hooked up to monitors that beeped with mechanical urgency. She looked so young, so fragile, and Nora felt her heart try to climb out of her throat. "Nora?" Lily's face brightened despite the obvious pain. "I did not know you were here. What happened?" Nora grabbed her sister's hand. Checking the monitors with the practiced eye of someone who had spent too many nights in hospitals, a doctor appeared, chart in hand. Her heart rhythm became irregular. "We need to do the surgery sooner than we planned. Ideally within the next week." The surgery they had been saving for, the one that cost more than Nora had earned in a year before Julian hired her. Even with insurance, there would be costs, complications, time off work she had not yet earned. Julian stepped forward. "What does she need?" The doctor looked between them, confused about who this man was and why he was asking. Nora's pride flared, the instinct to say she could handle this alone, that she did not need rescuing. But then Lily squeezed her hand, and Nora remembered what Julian had said. Taking help for Lily was not weakness. It was love making the hard choice. "The surgery costs $48,000 after insurance," the doctor said. "Plus potential complications, recovery time, follow-up care." "Do the surgery," Julian said. "Bill everything to Crane Industries Foundation Medical Fund. Whatever she needs, however long it takes." "Julian, you cannot, ... Double quotes, Nora started. "This is exactly what the foundation is for." His voice was gentle but firm. "Children who need medical care their families cannot afford? Lily qualifies. Unless you are going to tell me, I do not get to make decisions about my own foundation's spending." Tears burned in Nora's eyes. She wanted to argue, to maintain the independence she had fought so hard to build. But Lily was looking at her with hope that had been missing for months. And sometimes love meant accepting that you could not do everything alone. "Thank you," Nora whispered. Where forever begins with honesty, the surgery happened 4 days later. Nora sat in the waiting room with coffee that tasted like regret and fear, counting the minutes on a clock that moved too slowly. When Julian appeared with actual food and a blanket because the hospital was freezing, she broke. "I am terrified," she admitted, "of losing her, of failing at the foundation, of proving everyone right who said people like me do not get happy endings." Julian sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I see you, Nora. Not the version you think you need to be. The real you. The one who is scared and fierce and so damn strong it makes my chest hurt. And I am terrified too." "Of what?" "Of how much I care about you. Of wanting things I thought I was too broken to deserve." He turned to face her fully. "I did not hire you because you needed saving. I hired you because I needed someone to remind me why building things matters. Someone who fights for torn pages because they understand value is not the same as perfection." Nora's breath caught. "Julian, ... You do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know that you are not alone in being afraid. We can be afraid together and still build something worth having." When the surgeon emerged 3 hours later with news that the surgery was successful, that Lily would recover fully, Nora let herself cry. Not quiet, dignified tears, but the kind that came from years of holding everything together, finally letting go. Julian held her while she broke apart and put herself back together. His presence steady and warm and real. Where endings become beginnings 6 months later, Nora stood in front of 200 people at the foundation's first annual fundraiser. Lily sat in the front row, healthy and laughing, wearing a dress Julian had helped her pick out because he claimed to be an expert in formal attire. Which was obviously a lie. Nora spoke about torn pages and second chances, about the difference between charity and dignity, about building bridges instead of walls. When she finished, the applause was deafening. Julian found her afterward on the balcony where she had escaped for air. "You were brilliant," he said. "We were brilliant," Nora corrected. "None of this happens without both of us." He took her hand, tentative, giving her space to pull away. She did not. Instead, she stepped closer, letting herself want something beyond survival for the first time in years. "I love you," Julian said quietly. "I think I have since the moment you tried to give me that discount. But I need you to know that it does not change the foundation or your job or anything, except that I get to tell you the truth about how I feel." Nora smiled, feeling lighter than she had in a decade. "I love you too. Even though you destroyed a $300 book to test me. Especially because I destroyed a $300 book," he said, and kissed her like they had all the time in the world to figure out what forever looked like when two broken people decided to build it together, through the windows. Behind them, the city sparkled with lights and endless possibilities, and for the first time Nora believed she deserved to reach for them. The end.